morning. I would love to be up here and say that I'm glad you're all here. That would kind of be a lie. I was secretly hoping nobody would show up and I would be off the hook. But you're all here, so thank you for ruining my day. To say this is out of my comfort zone would be an understatement. My comfort zone is somewhere residing in another galaxy at the moment. And so you may wonder, why on earth am I up here? Well, it's because after I got home, I made a promise to God, and this is my effort to fulfill that promise. I figure we should be keepers of our word, and you really shouldn't break a promise to God, so here I am. Okay. So my Haiti story actually starts probably about a year before we even left. For those of you who don't know, I was part of a medical mission team that went to Haiti back in February. Okay. And about a year prior to that, I was in what I sort of term a spiritual valley. I feel like we all have peaks and valleys in our spiritual walks, and I didn't doubt my salvation. I didn't doubt the Lord. It was more of my personal study that I just wasn't excited about. I read my Bible because I'm supposed to, but I wasn't passionate about it. And I'd had times like that before in the past and didn't really think much of it. I knew if I just continued to study that I'll get out of it. Well, that didn't really happen. And so a few months went by, and so I tried to do some different devotional things, some other things to try to sort of get excited about my faith again, and nothing really worked. And finally, I prayed about it. Now, why I didn't do that in the first place, I don't know, but I didn't. And not 24 to 48 hours after I started praying, I received an invitation to a Bible study from my sister-in-law, Rachel. And I thought, maybe this is the answer I've been looking for. And I can stand up here now and tell you that it absolutely was God's answer to my prayer. Through this Bible study, the focus was on God's sovereignty, on His provision. We were studying the Israelites, essentially, beginning from the time they entered the Promised Land in Joshua, all the way through Solomon. And if you know anything about the Israelites, they're fickle, just like we are. And they repeatedly turn their backs on God, and circumstances would happen, and they would eventually turn around, turn back to the Lord, and He would accept them back. And through this story, what was very interesting and what resonated to me is that God always has a way of getting us back on the path. We can take forks in the road, we can get off the path, but He usually finds a way to get us back on it. When I was in Haiti, I felt really far off the path, I gotta tell you. I couldn't even see the path. And so this was God's way of preparing me for Haiti long before I ever even knew I was going to Haiti. And one of the themes that again was resounding through this Bible study is that God will not send you somewhere He will not prepare you to go. I think we see that repeated in the Bible. I think most of us can probably look back in our own lives and see ways that is true. You know, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not in the fire alone. After Jesus' death and resurrection, when the apostles were essentially sent out to continue His ministry, They weren't sent out alone. God sent the Spirit down on them, and the Spirit helped them in their ministry. So even though I didn't know that I needed this at the time, God was preparing me. Another way that I felt like I saw God's provision was just in the circumstances surrounding me going. I'd had family members who had gone on this trip several times before. I'm good. My father-in-law, my brother-in-law had been several times, and I had expressed interest in going at some point when the time was right. And it just so happened this past year they were short several of their medical providers. Some of the physicians who typically go weren't able to go, and so I was asked if I could fill that void, and I said sure. So in my head, that was God's way of telling me, yeah, this is what you need to do. You need to go. I put a map of Haiti up here. I'm a visual person, and this helps me learn. But some people have kind of wondered why it was so hard for us traveling. This right there, that's Port-au-Prince. That's the airport that we flew into. We worked out of Gonaive, which is right here. And that is about a 3 to 3.5 hour drive by car. We got to Haiti, and everything was fine until it wasn't. The first few days we were there, we didn't see anything out of the ordinary. We were able to do our first few medical clinics without a hitch. We traveled through Gonaive with no problems. And then Monday came. We woke up Monday morning, and it was going to be our first rural clinic, our first time to go outside of Gonaive. And we were going to a tiny town at the base of the mountains called Gramone. We got on the road. It was about 30 to 45 minutes we had been on the road, and we got stopped. And this is the roadblock that we actually got stopped at. I look at this picture, and it doesn't look at all threatening to me. I didn't feel threatened at all. This right here, so those are concrete columns, stones, a crate of some kind that they use to block the road so that we can't pass. And Passius, who is the Haitian missionary there, got out and started to negotiate. We're sitting in our car for several minutes, and it becomes pretty apparent that they are not going to let us through. So they get on the walkie-talkies and tell us, hey, we have to turn around. So we go down to do U-turns, and Tommy and I were in the last car in that caravan, and as we're driving down to do our U-turn, I can see up ahead on the road this larger group of people, mostly men, kind of running towards us. And it just so happened, as we were making the U-turn in the road, that group of people converged and surrounded our vehicle. So obviously we're going very slow because we don't want to run anybody over. And quick as lightning, the driver's side door is yanked open, an arm reaches under the steering column, grabs the keys, and they take off. So we are stuck, literally. We're sideways in the road. I don't even know where the keys are. I didn't even see where the guy went. One thing I will always remember is when that fight or flight response kicks in, how fast my brain worked, the clarity of thought that I had. I look back on that and I think, man, if my brain could work like that every day, oh, the things that I could get done. And so I'm sitting in the middle of the middle seat. I reach out and I slam down the locks on both of the rear doors. These are not automatic locks. They do not have automatic windows. They have automatic nothing in Haiti. And we're sitting there and I think, oh, this really isn't good. And I look out the side window down the road where the rest of our caravan had gone. They were kind of around the corner, so we couldn't see them. And I'm hoping against hope that there's some cavalry, something that's going to come rescue us. And there's nothing. And I'm sitting there and I think, wow, we are alone. And no sooner had I had that thought, and I hear a voice tell me, no, you're not alone. Interestingly, my brother-in-law heard a voice around the same time. It told him something different, but something that I think he equally needed to hear. And it kind of snapped me out of it. I thought, you're right. I'm not alone. I did not tell a soul about hearing that voice until after I got back home. Because I know what happens when you tell people that you hear voices in your head after a traumatic experience. But that's what I needed in that moment. And so I immediately start praying. And my prayer was not flowery. It was a very blunt discussion with God. Okay, God, you got to get us out of this. We are helpless. There is nothing that we can do to help ourselves at this moment. You're going to have to do it. We throw around the phrase, give it to God, a lot, and think most of our lives would be better if we could truly figure out how to do that. This is maybe the first time in my life that I ever truly gave something to Him completely. Because what I like to do, I give it to God, but I keep one hand on it, just in case He's going to drop it, just in case I need to steer it one way or another, because God needs my help. In this instance, I took this burden and I threw it at God like it was on fire. I don't want it. This is yours. Take it. And when I did that, the peace I felt immediately was almost overwhelming. I'm going to reread 2 Corinthians 3:17. It says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. I felt that liberty, even though I had not yet been liberated from my situation. And I've been trying to think of a visual for how to describe to people what that felt like, to be so completely full of the Spirit at that time that I felt that liberty. And this is the best I could come up with. Cinderella is my favorite Disney movie. And it's not so much the beautiful dress that I want you to focus on, but she is glowing. She is full of light. She's got the little sparklies around her. That's what it feels like to be full of the Spirit. And I think, man, if we could all walk around full of the Spirit like this, think of the light that we could shine around us, in our homes, in our communities. And if for no other reason, I'm glad that I went to Haiti so that I know what this feels like. Now, it doesn't mean I wasn't scared. The fear was present. The fear didn't go away, but it probably wasn't the most prominent emotion. We're still stuck in a hot car. It's Haiti. It's 95 degrees. We are on black asphalt. Y'all know how hot the cars here get in the summer. I knew we couldn't stay in that car forever, but I also knew we can't get out of this car. I was the only female in the car. And it occurred to me that if this does not end well, if they are somehow able to get us out of this car, it's probably going to be worse for me. there was a lot of yelling. They were surrounding our car, and they were just yelling. And we didn't understand a word of it. Some of them had rocks in their hands. One guy walked by and had a machete, and I just tried to block that from my mind immediately. But the fear was still there. Now, eventually, through the help of Jerome, this is him. This was actually taken later that same day. He was my translator for the week. This is another way of God's provision being present, because I was originally assigned a different translator, but they had messed something up, and so then I was assigned Jerome. Jerome was sitting next to me in the car. Our translators all traveled with us throughout the course of the week, and Jerome is the one that rolled his window down and very calmly, in a very low voice, began to negotiate with the people there. He never raised his voice. He never got angry. And eventually we were able to pay a little bit of money. They got us our keys back, and we were able to go. It became pretty apparent after this incident in the car that we were going to have to make some changes to our plans. Things were no longer safe for us to be on the roads. The rest of our planned clinics were all in rural areas, and we knew we weren't going to be able to continue the work that we had planned. The next few days were essentially spent being told we're going to try to go home, packing our things up, checking out of the hotel, loading our stuff in the car, only to be told, nope, it's not safe. The funny thing about hope is that hope is necessary. We needed the hope that we were going to be home. We needed hope that we were going to be able to see our families again. But every time that hope was not fulfilled, it was hard. And it became harder and harder and harder each time the answer was no. So finally we come to Friday, which was our initial departure date from Haiti. We were going to try to make our original flights. In order to do that, we got up very early. We were up about 3 a.m. that morning, and it was pouring down rain. Now, something you need to know about Haiti, especially this time of year, it doesn't rain. It especially does not pour down rain. And I really, truly thought, this is it. This is how God is going to get us home. God provided this rain. People in Haiti don't get out in the rain. They don't have umbrellas. They don't have tops on their cars. And that includes the protesters. And so we knew, this is it. This is how he's going to do it. We are loaded up. We are in the cars. We are seriously about to pull out. And I see Kevin, a man who was on the trip with us, unload his suitcase from the car and go inside the HCDP headquarters. And I got a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Kevin came around and talked to all of us and told us he felt like there was some information that we needed to know. And that was that at 10 o'clock the night before, Haiti's president had made a very inflammatory speech, a speech that was meant to anger and incite the protesters, so much so that Friday it was felt that the roads were going to be even worse than what they had been earlier in the week. We also found out that the U.S. State Department had increased their travel advisory for Haiti. Up until that point, the advisory was a level 3, which just means travel with caution. But overnight, they increased it to a level 4. That's the highest level there is. It means do not travel under any circumstances. So we had a decision to make. We had about 60 seconds to make that decision. And it was one of the hardest, I think, many of us have ever made in our lives. I did not want to stay. I did not want to stay in Haiti. But but also had a really bad feeling about getting on the road. So we ultimately decided to stay behind. And as we're unloading our stuff and going back inside, all I can think of was this the right decision? God provided the rain. Does this mean that I have a lack of faith in God because I'm not trusting Him to get us where we need to be? By that same token, I feel like God gives us brains for a reason. He gives us reasoning skills. And my brain was telling me, don't do it, don't go. I also still had that nasty feeling in the pit of my stomach that was not in a hurry for a repeat of what had happened Monday. Turns out it didn't matter. There was no right and wrong answer. I mentioned Kevin. We had been joking about Kevin's role on this trip because he's not a medical person. We weren't really sure what he was there for. When we asked him later, he didn't really know what he was there for, but he had been asked to go. He works for African Christian hospitals, and he thought he was kind of meant to sort of be a scout on this trip. But Kevin also had a CIA or former CIA contact that he had been in touch with all throughout the week. This former CIA operative was also telling him, don't go, don't get on the road. This former CIA contact ended up being extremely important because he essentially hooked us up with the helicopter company that was responsible for getting us out. Kevin had a very specific role on this trip. We all got home in large part because of Kevin and what he did behind the scenes, his communication with the elders at Pleasant Valley Church of Christ in Little Rock. He also essentially got in touch with another helicopter company that evacuated the other group. That Friday morning, I have to tell you, was almost as bad as Monday had been. Worrying about our friends who were on the road, knowing the types of roadblocks they were going to encounter. It was extremely stressful. We prayed many times. We were getting text updates about what was happening, the scary things that were going on, and it was gut-wrenching. Thankfully, they didn't experience anything like what had happened to us on Monday, but again, the fear was still present. So Friday, I had to call my husband and tell him, hey, I'm not coming home. Unbeknownst to me, Matt had been up the night before. He had heard about the president's speech. He read the transcript of the speech, and he had stayed up most of the night praying. And when I talked to him, he told me he'd essentially been praying that we wouldn't get on the road. Girls, if you hear nothing else from me today, one of these days when you're all looking for husbands, you need to find someone who is willing to stay up all night and pray for you if the situation arises. Now, eventually, my story has a happy ending. I'm here today because we were evacuated out by helicopter and made it safely home. I do want to show this real quick. This is James and Abigail Rucker and their son Micaiah. They are the American missionaries who were present in Ghana with us. They took care of us the extra night that we were there in Haiti. They fed us. Abigail made spaghetti for us. She made sure we all had places to sleep. And they were truly a blessing from the Lord. We went there intending to serve them, and instead they served us. This is a picture from us in the helicopter that Saturday morning. I can tell you those are some very happy, genuine faces. And then this is at the airport. It had been a very long 48 hours. We look haggard, but we were happy to be home. There are so many ways that God took care of us while we were in Haiti. I feel like most of the time when we look back and see God's provision in our lives, hindsight is 20/20. It's not until after the fact that we can look back and see how God was working things out for us. The interesting thing about Haiti is we were aware of His presence and aware of His provision the whole time, in real time. Now, I can look back and see some other things in hindsight, but again, it was that fullness of the Spirit. I can also tell you it was because of your prayers. That Cinderella feeling, that continued through the rest of the week, in part because of the earnest prayers of the church. So I'm also going to put in a shameless plug here real quick. It's a holiday season. We are all about to buy a bunch of Christmas presents. Jewelry, handbags, and home decor items are very common Christmas items. If you're going to buy some of those things anyway, I would ask that you visit this website. It's www.secondstorygoods.com. This is a mission work in Haiti started by Beaver and Kathy Brooks, and essentially what they do is they employ local artisans and they make the jewelry, they make the handbags, they make the baskets. There is no middleman. If you buy from Second Story Goods, the money goes directly to Second Story Goods and they can pay their workers. That means that their workers can provide for their families, their workers can have shelter for their families. It means everything to their livelihood. Another thing about Beaver Brooks is that he loaned us the Ford Excursion they used to transport all of their goods. That's how we got 9 people and luggage from HTDP headquarters to the airstrip in Ghana to get the helicopter. So if you would, please consider visiting this website and see what they've got. Your money will be able to do a lot of good. I also ask that you please continue to pray for Haiti. They need God's continued presence. Things are bad. Things are really bad. They're worse now than they were when we were there. I got an email yesterday that was very disheartening. They're hungry. Even the people who don't normally go hungry in times like this. They're living on essentially rice and vegetable oil and peas, which you can't do for a long period of time. They have to buy fuel on the black market, and so it's very, very expensive. There's no electricity. They can't keep their generators running because there's no fuel. Just please continue to remember Haiti in your prayers. And I guess I'm supposed to open it up for questions now? Well, I'm not going to be sad if nobody has any questions. Thank you.